Hey everybody, welcome back to Winnipeg Hockey. Today we are giving our free agency grades for the Central Division. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing for more hockey talk and NHL content. All right, so let's not hesitate. Let's jump in. We're going to go alphabetical based on the cities. So we're going to start with Arizona State Coyotes. So they added Cassian, Stetcher, and Gillies, the goalie, and they lost Roussel, Erickson, Beagle, Kessel, and Galchenyuk. That's quite the list there, fellas. So our grades. Jake, you gave him a C. Tell us why.
So I think it's good that they got all those contracts off the book, but they didn't do anything to get better. And so we're interpreting these as, did this team get better? Did this team get worse? The Coyotes are still going to be the Coyotes. They didn't really add anyone. Poor Zach Cassian has to play in a college arena, and they're still just going to be the Coyotes we know and don't love.
Yeah, Matt, and looking at your grade here, you gave him an F. Why so harsh on the Coyotes?
I just thought, as bad as they are, you wanted to see a little bit of a step up for them in free agency and in the draft. I mean, it was one thing, but they just didn't seem like they brought in any real impact players that are going to give them some major boost to their lineup this year. And my philosophy for this and what we'll see in the future is, if you're not getting better and you're staying the same, it's an F for me, because if you're not getting better through free agency and you're staying the same, you're not wanting to win. If you're not wanting to win, that's an F.
Mm-hmm. Jake, so I also gave a C for the same reasons you said. I think getting rid of them old guys and allowing more prospects to play is going to be good for them. So I gave them a C as well. So their average was a C minus. So now let's hop over to the Chicago Blackhawks. They had an interesting one. They added Peter Mrazek, Athanasiou, and Max Domi. They lost Delia, DeBrincat, Kubalik, Lankinen, Strome, DeHaan. And the list will probably keep on growing. So, Jake, you gave him a D. Tell us why.
So the only reason they didn't get an F is because they brought in those two guys. It's not so they come in and they have some miracle run and get a wild card spot. It's so that they can trade them for more assets at the deadline. That's a really good move. That's what saved them from an F. But the fact that you run out of breath saying all the guys that they lost, that drug their grade way down.
Yeah, and Matt, you gave him an F, and as a Hawks fan, some people might be scratching their heads, but others are going to know exactly what you're going to say. What's up?
I think it wasn't really more about what they brought in. They brought in some decent guys that are going to fill the role for probably just this season. It's just really about what they lost. The team just got worse. I mean, there's no way around it. As much as you're trying to rebuild, the roster is just at a point where it's just getting worse and worse, it seems like every single season. And this year, more in particular, trying to tear things down, it's going to look bad. And when you're going to be as bad as they're going to be this year, to set yourself up for that point, you got to give this team an F.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I gave the Hawks the highest grade here, and let me explain why. The GM, Kyle Davidson, specifically said this team is entering a major rebuild. So I took that perspective and said, okay, well, if they're rebuilding, they need to acquire assets, and that's getting rid of a lot of people. Now, do I agree with the DeBrincat trade? I thought he was the superstar to build around. A C might be generous the more I think about it, but I just took that perspective on it. So overall, they averaged a C minus from us. So now let's go to the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Colorado Avalanche. Jake and Matt, you both handed these guys an F. So Jake, let's come to you here. Why did you hate what they did this offseason?
So let me start with, we're looking at this as, did this team get better? Did this team get worse? So whether you think that the re-signings they did were good or not, this is, look at that list of everyone they lost. That's not great. You lost someone like Nazem Kadri. You lost Burakovsky, who was a great depth guy. You lost your starting goaltender. This was not a good offseason for the Avalanche. They lost a lot of people, but that's what happens when you make a push for the Stanley Cup. I will say I really like that they brought back Manson, but that's not what we're looking at here, so you get an F.
Mm-hmm. Matt, anything else you want to add to Jake's point there?
No, I agree with him. It's just not getting any better.
Yeah, so I gave him a C plus here, mainly because I liked their re-signings. At least most of them. Nemestikov, no. But or I'm sorry, not Nemestikov, Nichushkin. Sorry, my bad. I don't know why I said that. But anyway, so just based on some of the re-signings, and Jake, like you said, the Manson contract was really good. So I thoroughly enjoyed that one.
And can I add before we go on, the only guy that they have added that was not on the team last year was Georgiev. And they're calling him a starting goalie. The most significant thing that guy has ever done is punch Tony DeAngelo. So he hasn't proven anything, and I don't buy that he's a starting goalie.
Yeah, some Avs fans might be super confident in him, but honestly, why let Kemper walk if you're going to bring him in? I don't know. All right, so let's move on to Dallas, fellas. All across the board here, we gave very similar grades. They added Miller and Marchment. They lost Klingberg, Radulov, Nemestikov, and Holtby. Jake, Matt, you both gave him a C. Why'd you do it? Jake, we'll come back to you here.
All right, so I think you look at this, and this is like the old horse that's limping around the pasture, and there comes a point where you just got to put it down. The Dallas Stars, they made it to that Stanley Cup final, and now they're just trying to hold on to their pieces. They're limping. They're limping through the NHL season after season now, and the GM just needs to put them down. This team can't compete anymore, and they're still trying, and it's just sad.
Matt, other thoughts here?
I gotta agree with him. I mean, at this point, they're just kind of putting a bandage on a stab wound. So it's like they're not really doing anything to really fix this roster at this point. They're kind of just trying to just stay afloat. I mean, they're not really helping anybody in that organization right now. I mean, guys like Jamie Benn and a guy like Tyler Seguin, they're going to have a lot on their plate this year trying to carry this team.
Yeah, I give him a C+ here because I really liked the Marchment signing. I think that was a really good asset to bring in here. But with everything that they lost, I mean, I agree with you guys. Like, I don't think they're far away from having to tear things down and really start fresh because their guys are not getting any younger. So they averaged a C+ from us, fellas. So let's move on to our next team, and that would be the Minnesota Wild. And man, after being as competitive as they were this season, this offseason has been nothing but a disappointment. Jake, you gave him an F. Matt, you gave him a D. Jake, will come to you first, and then Matt will come over to you.
I hate everything about what this team has chosen to be. I didn't like Kaprizov at first, but he's grown on me. I hope that he eventually gets back over from Russia and that they don't detain him like that other guy. But other than that, they had those buyouts, and that's crippled them severely. That's why they had to lose Fiala. They had strong goaltending with Cam Talbot. He was an all-star. That's what he was. He was a great goalie, made it to the all-star game, and almost immediately after, they trade for Marc-Andre Fleury. Why are you doing that? That doesn't make sense to me. And then not only that, they re-signed Fleury and they trade Talbot. So I just don't understand where they're going. I don't think they got better this offseason, and so they're going to get an F from me.
Matt, other thoughts there?
I think it's just another point. It's a lot like Dallas, where it's just kind of the fact where this team really didn't make any big splashes that was really going to change the tide of this team, which is weird because they were going to have a lot of success last year. You thought they were going to build on that, but more so they just brought back Fleury, and then they just did things. They just pretty much stayed put, and I can understand the getting rid of Cam Talbot because at that point, if you're going to re-sign Fleury, you really don't need Cam Talbot as another goaltender. So maybe bringing in a younger asset and a goaltender like Gustav Sin to be the backup there is maybe the point. But other than that, just nothing of note, and that's why I gave him such a low.
Yep, I agree for all the same reasons there, fellas. So let's move on to Nashville, who added McDonagh, Lankinen, and Sanford, and they lost Rittich. Jake, you gave him an A-. Matt, you gave him a B+. Very similar there. Jake, why'd you give him an A-?
So the Nashville Predators are a team that I have doubted for too long. Last season, I predicted them to be last in the Central. I thought they're done. There's no chance. They've been bad for years. And then they have that resurgence where they're just phenomenal. And obviously they get knocked out by the Avalanche in round one, but that was without UC Soros, who I think is a great goalie. I will never doubt that man again. I think the fans, I can't tell how much they like the guy because I know they loved Pecorine and Soros kind of had big shoes to fill. But he's done great on that team. I think McDonagh's great for them, and they only lost Dave Rittich, but they replaced him with Lankinen, who I think was a great goalie who could have been a starter in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Matt, other thoughts to add there?
Yeah, I think a guy like Ryan McDonagh, I think fits the system really well. And I think he's a guy in a good defensive system. He's a good defensive defenseman that really fits perfectly with this team. And a guy like I've talked about in the past, and Kevin Lankinen, I think he's the guy that runs out of gas towards the end of the season when you have him as a starter. But in those spots and what he will be here in Nashville as a backup goaltender, I think he's going to be really solid, especially behind that good defense there. So they definitely were a team, unlike Minnesota, unlike Dallas, where they're kind of stuck in the mud there. This is a team that decided they wanted to stick their teeth in and they wanted to move up the standings, and they did that in a big way, bringing in signings.
Mm-hmm. Definitely probably pleased Forsberg after he just signed that massive extension.
Yeah, not only did they keep Forsberg, they also added Zach Sanford. He's a top 6 forward. So in a weak Central, weaker than what we're used to, great moves from Nashville.
Absolutely. And speaking of Sanford, let's move on to the St. Louis Blues here, who added Grice and I'm going to butcher that name. I apologize. Is it Acciari?
I say Acciari. I probably won't even hear it a lot this year because I think we picked him up to play with the Springfield Thunderbirds.
All right. Well, on that note, you guys lost Lindgren, Husso, Bozak, and Perron. Perron being the most notable there. Jake, you gave him an F. Matt, you gave him a D. I think we're all on the same page here. Jake, why'd you give him an F, especially as a Blues fan?
I've been crying myself to sleep for the last week. Why Perron? Why Husso? More importantly, I thought all season, yeah, so what? Like Husso, he's good. And, we got that good return for him. And then Chucky Sideburns, Charles Lindgren, he can come in. He'll be our backup. It'll be great. No, they let him walk. And then they pick up 36-year-old Thomas Greiss. I don't understand why when it was around the same AAV and the same cap hit. So why would you let Lindgren walk when he played so well for you? I don't understand what Doug Armstrong is doing. I hate that he dismantled the Stanley Cup team. I'm just going to keep crying myself to sleep the next week.
Yeah, and Matt, I'm assuming you gave a D for the same reasons here.
I agree with him 100% on this one. I think just not really making any good additions.
Yeah, and I also gave them an F. I didn't like what they did here. So now let's move on to the final team in the Central, and that is the Winnipeg Jets. Jake, you gave a D. Matt, you also gave a D for these guys. They added Rittich and Capobianco, but they lost Comrie, Stanford, and Stastny. So how come you guys didn't like these moves?
I don't understand what direction this team's going in. Like they lost Stanford and Stastny. I know Stastny's getting old. They've still got some of their big names. So Jets fans, I might be very wrong about you, but I don't think this team's a contender anymore. Maybe in the weak Central they can fight for a wild card, but I don't understand why they're not completely selling. Full-on Blackhawks level selling with Bedard being the lottery win. So I just don't understand this team. So I gave them a D because I don't think they got much better, and I don't think they were competing last season. So kind of mediocre.
Mm-hmm. Matt, how about you?
Yeah, the same thing. It's just a little bit of a weird offseason. I mean, coming into the offseason, there was a lot of rumbles that Mark Scheifele might be on the move. And it was like, okay, maybe they're going to go in and they're going to actually start rebuilding. Because if they move him, they're definitely going to start rebuilding. Then nothing of that happens. It all of a sudden went dark. And then you're like, okay, well, maybe they're going to build on this core and they're going to try. And then they really don't bring anybody else in either. And their draft was kind of meh. So it's like they're really stuck in the mud here. And I don't know if that's just the theme of the Central this offseason or what. But it just seems like there's been so many teams in this division that wants to stay put and thinks they have what it takes to win, when that's definitely not the case from what we saw last year. So it's a little perplexing, but yeah, it's definitely not worthy of a high grade.
Yeah, so common theme here with the Central. For most of the teams, we weren't too fond of what they did. And it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this season plays out for them. Free agency is obviously still ongoing. Teams can make more moves. But as of today, these teams have not been doing a great job of trying to improve, with the exception of Nashville. Nashville is definitely trying to improve, which in this division, honestly, they can take 2 to 3 steps up if teams don't make moves themselves. So everyone, thank you for tuning into this video, and let us know in the comments below what grades you would give these teams for their free agency and offseason so far. And we'll see you next time on Winnipeg Hockey.